Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm Washington State Government reporter for the Center Square, Carlene Johnson. And joining me right now is Tim Klauser, who covers Spokane and much of Eastern Washington for all of us. And he's been covering an exclusive series of articles about the city of Spokane preparing to part ways with Spokane Regional Emergency Communications, basically their 911 service. But now SREC is asking for some time, it sounds like, Tim, to maybe clear up confusion about the split, which is set for January, if I'm not mistaken, even as the city says this thing isn't going to be ready to launch come January. So what's the latest in this exclusive coverage coming from you, Tim?
Yeah, so last week the city council had a committee meeting, and they essentially talked about their upcoming transition to a new dispatch center. They've used the regional model the last few years. The Spokane Fire Department has. The Spokane Police Department has its own smaller dispatch center, so it never fully joined despite SREC's demands over the years. But essentially, earlier in the year, the SREC board voted to remove the city from the regional model after the city had asked its state lawmakers to claw back funding that it had paid SREC for years of services. When they had this sort of update during the committee meeting last week, SREC wasn't even there. The spokesman review had reported on the meeting right after the fact and had accidentally referenced that SREC officials were there and had spoken, but that wasn't the case. But essentially, this meeting was a follow-up to our coverage. In the days leading up to that meeting, I had gotten a hold of a feasibility study that essentially showed that 3 months before the city's supposed to transition to this new dispatch center, they realized that it would cost almost $100 million in the first 5 years before inflation. And the consultants also told the city, look, usually you want 18 to 24 months to do this. And the city said, look, we need to do it in 14 months at a minimum. So they said they could do it contingent upon several assumptions that every single one has to hold true for them to hit that 14-month timeline for launch. But at the same time, we're only 3 months away from January 2026 when the city's supposed to have its new dispatch center set up. And SREC says the city hasn't even reached out about which services it wants to contract through next year as it's sort of in the middle of this transition. So after the spokesman ran its article following up to our coverage and that committee meeting, SREC was pretty upset and wanted to clear the air, address several inaccuracies that they thought were stated during the meeting and in the spokesman article. So last Friday, the SREC board of directors sent a letter to the city saying, look, essentially, this is your fault. If you want clarity, then you need to invite us to the table. You guys have another committee meeting on October 6th. We would like to be on the agenda for 10 or 20 minutes so we can tell you what you guys need. So,
and remind me how it works now. If someone in the city of Spokane, needs to call 911, are those calls already redirected? Fire call, police call, whatever the crisis call is being made?
Yeah, so essentially almost every fire and police agency in Spokane County participate in SREC. So they pay dues, they contribute tax revenue to get these services. So no matter where you are in Spokane County, if you call 911, SREC dispatchers are going to answer the phone. Now, if it's a fire call in the city, SREC is going to answer the call and dispatch units to that incident. Now, since SPD has its own secondary PSAP, public safety answering point, SREC still answers the initial phone call and they say, hold on, we'll transfer you to SPD. And they hit one button and the call transfers. It's not like they have to look up the number, hit every digit and wait on hold. It's just an instant transfer. So whether you're in Meade, Airway Heights, over near the airport or other parts of Spokane, SREC always answers the phone. Now, come January 2026, SREC told the city, look, we're willing to maybe contract out some services, like you can use our radio towers and stuff, but there won't be extensions in terms of dispatching. Now, that doesn't mean that the calls are going to go unanswered. Essentially, come New Year's Day, whenever someone within the city calls about a fire incident, SREC will still answer the phone. But rather than dispatching units directly to that incident, they're going to again transfer that call to SBD instead of just dispatching like they have done in the past and currently do. So, the city's concerned that there might be some delays to service. SREC saying, look, you already have a dispatch center there and you had months to prepare for this. So they're saying it's pretty much in the city's hands at this point.
Yeah, well, so what happened? I mean, why has the city convinced itself or told taxpayers they think they can do this cheaper, more effectively? Response times will go down. I mean, what's the impetus for the split with SREC?
Well, I know a few years in the past, there was concerns over the transfer between calls. I know a few times people kind of got hung up in between dispatchers. And I know a few years ago, the city went to the state legislature and tried to get some of the tax revenue it was contributing to the regional model. It was trying to get those dollars to come directly to the city. So it could just pay SREC, or it could go a different way in the future if it wanted. Now, there's multiple different branches to SREC's funding model. There's member fees that each agency pays, a sales tax, 0.1% sales tax that voters approved in 2017. And then there's the state's 911 excise tax. So whenever someone calls 911, they pay this tax that's a few cents, and then that money goes directly to the county. Now, the city asked the state legislature a few months ago to, instead of sending that money directly to the county, that the county should split that revenue up. And when it did that, SREC said, look, we can tell what you're doing. You're trying to take the revenue and walk away. And the city makes up almost half of all the calls that SREC receives and dispatches. So it's a big deal to them. It's a lot of funding. So when the city did that, SREC pretty much waved goodbye and voted to kick the city out. And then as that bill kind of went through the state legislature, they were going back and forth trying to get a compromise. The state passed a bill saying that the county had to split up that revenue, which they're in the process of trying to figure out how to do that. But it's just been a lot of back and forth and just kind of constant turmoil between these two partners.
And you asked the communications person, I saw that in your article, about the transmission towers, because that's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, well, somebody paid for those, to go in so that real time connection can happen when there's an emergency. So right now, does the city 3 months from now going to be prepared with their own towers? They're going to have to rent those from SREC, or what's the plan?
So that's what we'll probably find out during next week. Councilmember Zach Chapone, who chairs the Public Safety and Community Health Committee, he told me that he will likely accept SREC's pleas to be on the agenda for that day. So SREC will kind of lay out what the city might need moving forward. But when I asked SREC and I said, look, you mentioned there's a possibility that they could contract some services, what would those be? And the first example they brought up was those radio towers, because SREC has, I believe, 10 to 20 something radio towers scattered around the county. And that's not just something that the city could instantly stand up in the next 3 months. That would be a huge undertaking, not to mention it would cost millions of dollars.
They already can't afford this whole thing, right? That's a bunch more.
But it's not just the towers too. Like, you think those towers communicate with SREC's radio system, and that radio system is in every single police car in the city and every single fire unit. So it's not like the city can just say, oh, well, now it's going to our system. They have to put that system in. So all these police cars in the city are already connected with SREC. So in terms of efficiency, if the city is going to take 14, 18 to 24 months to stand up its PSAP, it's probably in the best interest of tax dollars and just response times to keep those systems in place, at least in the interim, until you're able to afford and build up your own. That way, calls aren't taking longer to respond to.
Is there any sense at this point that the city will just say, you know what, we're not going to be ready to go come January 1. We probably can't afford what we promised we could do. Can we please reconcile? Is there any room left for that to happen?
No, not really. There's not room for that. So essentially, behind the scenes, behind all of this, SREC has been it purchased and is currently implementing a new computer-aided dispatch system, also called a CAD system. So they purchased this, I believe, a few months ago, and that new CAD system will go live in March. Now, this takes a lot of time and money to build up, and they have to do it specific to all these agencies that are participating in SREC. And that's one of the reasons that SREC wanted SPD to commit along with the fire department, because it had to build out this new dispatch system for all the agencies that are participating. And the city's been back and forth the last few years. So they said pretty much the city needs to join or it needs to leave. And when it kind of got to those final stages, and they said, look, we're going to move forward with this CAD system. If you don't commit, you won't be a part of it, and we won't be able to dispatch you come when it's implemented in March. The city and SREC waved goodbye, and now they're splitting ways. So that's why SREC is saying it's going to reroute calls come January, because its new CAD system isn't set up for the city. So at this point, it's just going to have to reroute those calls. Now, when the city stands up its CAD system, it's going to be almost identical to SREC. So they said there might be a possibility where they could, somehow pair the systems, I believe, so they can more easily switch calls if that's needed. But SREC will continue to answer all 911 calls until the state says the city's primary PSAP is ready. You can now set it up so when someone calls 911 within the city's PSAP will answer the call, not SREC. Now, there might be some issues where in some instances, someone in the city calls 911 and it still goes to SREC. But that already happens with, say, like Kootenai County in Idaho. It borders Spokane County. Sometimes people near the fringe, they'll call 911 and it's for some reason goes to SREC, and then they hit the button and transfer it. So there will still be some cases like that. But come January, SREC will begin rerouting those calls.
And of course, the bottom line for Joe Public having an emergency and needing to call is this going to delay? Because, when you're the person, if you've ever had to call 911, when you're the person that is, hang on, I'll transfer your call. That's the last thing you want to hear in that moment of crisis, whether you're calling from a car crash or, somebody fell, whatever. The response time is critical. So, well, I appreciate how you've been dogging this story, a series of articles at thecentersquare.com. Tim Clouser, thank you for writing on this and for following it. I know there's another meeting next week, and I'm sure you'll be covering that as well for any updates. For now, I'm Carlene Johnson along with Tim Clouser, and this has been Washington in Focus.